Today, I'm diving into something real, raw, and very personal, the shifts that I'm making in my life and work as I navigate perimenopause. As my body and energy are changing, so too is my approach to pretty much everything: my daily routines, my business, the foods I eat, and even down to my self care practices. It's a season that's asking me to slow down, to tune in, and above all, to embrace change. So, if you're also experiencing shifts in your body, your energy, or your life, or simply the shifts that are constantly happening in our world right now, or if you're curious about what this season of womanhood brings, I invite you to join me. I'm sharing the insights I've gained, the habits I'm evolving, and the ways that I'm learning to honor this time as a profound season of growth. Because truly, it's about so much more than just managing symptoms. It's about stepping into deeper versions of ourselves. So let's dive in. Welcome to Herself, a space for women to have deep conversations about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential, so you can become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. After being in business for over 2 decades, I've learned, as you likely have too, that as you grow your business grows you in unexpected, often challenging, yet miraculous ways. Here, we'll talk about how to get out of your own way so you can grow a business that's abundant and sustainable while allowing you to be a force for good in the world. I'll give you simple, actionable strategies as well as wisdom and inspiration to help you root into your wholeness, lead from your values, and work in ways that feel deeply aligned so you can bring your true self into the world through your business and in every area of your life. Hello, women. Welcome back. It's Sarah here, and I always look forward to sitting down each week and connecting with you in this way. If you are listening to this in real time, it is a big week up ahead. The election is happening here in the US this Tuesday, and I just want to send out a loving reminder to take really good care of yourself this week. I mean, every week, but especially this week, and really focus on your inner world, just doing all of your spiritual practices, your self-care practices. Be extra gentle. And hopefully what I'm talking about today will also be in support of that. So we are moving into the topic of perimenopause. And up until just a few months ago, perimenopause felt like a concept to me. And while I feel like I've been preparing for menopause for some time, been aware it's on the horizon, I'm very connected with and conscious of my cycles. And I've been doing things like talking to my own mother about how old she was when she went through perimenopause and learning about what the process was like for her, and listening to the guidance from some of my mentors who are now postmenopausal, who really advised me to do more of my pushing and kind of pedal to the metal activities in my work prior to menopause. So I'd have the chance to slow down more during that transition. Also, over these past several years, really reduced, even eliminated alcohol and caffeine from my life, two major hormone disruptors for us as women. And overall, just taking really good care of myself, doing a lot of self-care, eating really well, and continuing to honor my menstrual cycles, which honoring started when I was 21 and I was graduating from college in New York City. And during a routine gynecological exam, I found out that I had advanced cervical dysplasia. Also, from years of eating disorders and exercise addiction, I wasn't getting my period. I got a really large, painful ovarian cyst. And one thing led to another, and I ended up moving to Thailand when I was 21. It's another story for another time. And you can hear me talk about it in other episodes on this podcast or in my first book, The Way of the Happy Woman. But really, I dove into deep healing there, particularly with a traditional Chinese medicine doctor and studying a lot about women's healing through Ayurveda. And through that, took me a few years of really, really being devoted to those paths of healing. I remember the moment when I got my period again. I was in a massage parlor, a massage studio in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where I lived. I was getting a foot massage, and I just had that feeling of, oh, think my cycle is here. And I just felt this euphoria and this deep gratitude that it returned. And it has returned ever since then. And I've been in deep reverence with it. And I might be, in the minority of women who just say that I really love my period. I really love having my cycle each month. It's a time that I really appreciate slowing down and going inside. And it's just been a really beautiful presence over these past 20 plus years. And my first book, The Way of the Happy Woman, came out in 2011 when I was in my early 30s. And in that book, I compiled everything that I learned when I was living in Thailand, all about the importance of women living in harmony with nature's cycles, with their own cycles. And I've been living that, and it's continued to grow and deepen as I continue to grow and evolve as a woman. And I've started to expand that philosophy out to seasons in our lives like heartbreak and grief, and how we need to care for ourselves differently depending upon what's going on in our personal, professional, and collective lives. And men are a lot simpler than we are, simply put. I mean, just biologically, they have one sex hormone, testosterone, which operates in 24-hour cycles. And we as women are three primary sex hormones, which do a lot more than just govern things related to sex, are testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. And these operate in 28 to 30-day cycles. So we have a lot more complexity, a lot more nuance, and we need much more than a one-size-fits-all approach to health, much more than a one-size-fits-all approach to life and to business. And this is hopefully going to be supportive to helping us to navigate more of that complexity. And I was anticipating starting to experience or notice these shifts more in my early 50s. That's when my mom went through menopause. I'm turning 47 in a month. So that would still give me, say, 3 to 5 years before that transition. I still don't feel like I will go through menopause until that time, but it caught me off guard when I realized that I was being impacted by it now. And while there haven't been any changes to my cycles, which was kind of what I was anticipating keeping an eye out for, I noticed other changes were happening. And it took me some time to connect all the dots and to realize that those changes were all rooted in perimenopause. Now, since perimenopause is yet another black hole in women's health, I wanted to be really transparent about my process here and what I'm learning so far, in case it can help you or other women who are experiencing this too, or younger women, to help better prepare you for what's ahead so that you're not caught so off guard like I felt like I was, even though I was trying to do things to prepare. Now, I want to say a few pieces of context before I go into more details. The first one is I am not a medical doctor, so please do not take what I'm saying as medical advice. I'm simply sharing my experience. Number two is I do not want any advice. So while I always love to hear from you, please do not send me information about things that you think I should do, your advice. I'd love to hear about your experience, but I am not needing any advice right now. I have everything that I need, and I appreciate your care and support. And I also want to name that this is an agreement that I have in all of my retreats and programs to not offer advice unless asked for it. So it's just in general a good practice for us to take on. So thank you in advance for that. And the final piece of context is that all of this is shifting and changing. And what I'm sharing right now is where I am right now. And I may not be here a month from now or even a year from now. So as long as we're on the same page with that, I will start to dive in about how this all has unfolded for me. This past spring, my third book came out, Handbook for the Heartbroken. If you have not yet read it, I encourage you to. And since I have been through book launches in the past, I know that they are sprint times in my life and in my business, and they require more exertion and more extroversion and more so than normal. And if I'm honest, more than I normally feel comfortable with. Yet that is what is needed to bring a book into the world. And while I really enjoy the writing process, I know that to really be a good steward for my books, I need to be with it beyond the writing process through the marketing and the sharing process too. So I prepared last spring. I did a personal retreat in advance. I did a gentle cleanse to really just prepare my entire system for what was ahead. So when mid-April came around, I was feeling quite good. And then we were off to the races. And my book came out. I started doing a lot of media interviews in mid-April. My book came out the first week in May. I got engaged, which was a wonderful surprise just a few days prior to that. So it was a lot happening at once. And while it was all positive stress, it was a lot for my system. It was a lot for my system. And I was still going. I had lots of media interviews. I was heading into a program launch in June and July. And add to that, there were a few curveballs that came my way in my work. And suddenly I had a very overflowing plate. And while I'd built in recovery time by taking the month of August off, by the time that came around, I was very, very ready for it. I was very ready for time off. And I found myself wishing and really making a mental note for the future to also take a week off after a book launch, even if I'm later taking a month off, just to help me have more intentional time to reset between big projects. And I acknowledge just that the way things were set up this time around, it simply wasn't possible. And I was, as we often need to do in times when unexpected things happen, I was just doing the best I could with what I had. And so during my month off, I'd purposely not plan any big travel or big experiences during that time. I knew that I was just going to need a landing pad to rest and do a lot of self-care and just be super simple and to not have things on my schedule, to not have a structure. And that is exactly what I did during August. And during that time, I was able to start to listen to my body more closely again. I'm always listening to my body, but you know how it is when things are really busy. It's harder to tune in at that deeper level. So once all like the stimulation had subsided, because I was off all email, I was off all social media, not in contact with anything in my work, it was just time for me. I was able to really hear that my body was just needing different things. And the way that I had been caring for it wasn't quite working the way that it used to. So throughout the month of August, I was just experimenting a little bit with my diet. I had also added in some Pilates and sculpt workouts to my mornings. My mornings, I always begin with about a half an hour meditation and then about an hour of movement, usually about 30 minutes. Here's how I shifted it: about 30 minutes of yoga, usually yin yoga, and about 20 to 30 minutes of some sort of low impact Pilates or sculpt workouts. And I use an app called Melissa Wood Health to help me with that. And there's just really great Pilates and sculpt workouts that are anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And so I just listen to my energy level and I see what I'm feeling called for each morning. And you can do different ones for abs or arms or legs or whole body. And I'd started that back in April. So partnering up my meditation and my yoga with some low impact strength training. And that was feeling really good. So I was continuing that in August. And I was resting a lot, but still I wasn't bouncing back like I was used to. And I thought, sometimes maybe for like a week or so, I'm tired if I take time off. But even after almost 5 weeks off, I was still exhausted. And one of the pieces was that I just hadn't been sleeping through the night in a long time. And I wasn't waking up feeling rested. And towards the end of my time off, I had a meal with a friend who is in her early 50s. And we ended up talking more about her experience with perimenopause and menopause. And she started talking about it. She started making shifts at age 45. And after that conversation, the light bulb really went off in my head. And I thought, oh, this is perimenopause. This is perimenopause. So once I had that reframe, I felt a few things. I felt surprise, like, oh, I thought I had more time. And wow, this is happening now. And this is what it feels like. I felt anger that I just didn't feel that prepared for it. Like, even though I was trying to prepare for it, I had seen my primary care doctor just a month prior to that. And there was no mention of this at all of, oh, you're almost 47. And these are, are you noticing any of these symptoms? She was telling me I needed to get my tetanus shot, but not to keep an eye out for perimenopause. I also felt anger that just women my age weren't and aren't talking about it. So anger that I just felt blindsided and that didn't feel like it's necessary. I also felt eagerness to start reading books about this and listening to podcasts and researching different practitioners and health protocols. And I'm a very motivated person, especially when it comes to my health. So pretty soon after that, I had that realization. And this all happened right as I was returning to work for my sabbatical. So I was just working with some parts of me that were feeling overwhelmed. Like, okay, I'm trying to transition back to work in a conscious way. And I just have this whole new piece that I'm needing to suddenly work in. So gratefully, I met with a naturopath who specializes in women's health, and we started to put together a new protocol for myself. And I do annual blood work with my primary care doctor, but we weren't testing for estrogen levels and progesterone levels or doing a full testosterone panel. We weren't testing for things like ferritin because, for instance, I test for iron each year, but ferritin is more of like the deep iron reserves that show if you're deficient at a deep level. I also did a Dutch test with this naturopath to check on my adrenal function, my thyroid function. And I've been doing all those things up until I did my IVF treatments 5 years ago. There was a lot I was doing for my health at that time. But after those treatments failed, I just felt like I needed a break from it all. I felt like I really needed to simplify and just connect with my body in a more immediate way without making things so kind of scientific. And I'm glad that I did that. That really worked for me. It was really supportive. But when things started to shift again this summer, I realized, okay, I need to get more nitty gritty about all of this again. And I do think the stress from this spring and early summer, again, which was both positive and negative stress, mostly positive stress, it kicked off the perimenopausal process for me in a more noticeable way. And that's what I hear is common for women, that stress is such a big piece of this. And I'm glad that it did because it was a gentle wake-up call. It wasn't a huge alarm bell, but it is giving me an ample runway over these next several years to really start preparing my body and my whole being in different ways as I head towards the larger life transition that is menopause. As a little girl, I loved playing school. And my favorite part was writing on a chalkboard with a fresh piece of white chalk. Today, my teacher's heart lives on, only now, instead of teaching with chalkboards, I make sure my online programs are stored and shared in the most organized, intuitive way possible. For the past few years, I've used Kajabi for this. It's heads and tails above any other online course platform that I've used since I first started teaching online back in 2008. Not only does Kajabi host all of my online programs, it also hosts all my program web pages and opt-in pages. It even hosts the private student-only podcasts I share inside my programs. Plus, it's easy for me and my team to use, and most importantly, it's easy for my students to use. I love it. If you're looking to up-level, streamline, and beautify things in your own business, whether it's how you deliver your online courses, create web pages, or even host your entire website, I invite you to enjoy a free 30-day trial with Kajabi, which is one of the sponsors for this podcast. You can click the link in the show notes to get started with your free 30-day trial. If you're like me, you'll be so happy you did. The only downside is no chalk is involved. Now, the big shifts that I've made as a result of all of this, and again, these are things that I'm doing now. I can't speak for where I'll be in the future, but one of the biggest ones is eating more protein. And I'll say that in my 20s and even my late teens, I was mostly vegetarian, vegan at times. I started eating animal protein again in my early 30s for health reasons. And a couple of years ago, I started to shift back to being more plant-based, and my body just started not wanting animal protein. And when my blood labs came back showing low ferritin, again, even though my iron levels looked okay in my other blood work, I saw that I need to bring back in red meat and just more animal protein in general throughout the day in order to be eating enough protein and keeping my muscles strong, which is going to help to keep my bones strong as I get older. I had also been intermittent fasting. So I was eating more like a brunch rather than a breakfast and a lunch, and then a big snack, and then a dinner, and then just taking time in the morning. I'd have something to drink in the morning, but I wouldn't eat until around 11 a.m. And when meeting with this naturopath, she was really encouraging me to eat within 90 minutes of waking up and to have that be a really protein packed meal. So that was a big shift for me. Like my mornings were really dialed in a certain way, and my days were structured in a certain way to eat at certain times. So that required some re-navigation that I feel like I'm still in. I'm kind of giving myself this whole season, this whole fall season to adjust to a new schedule and to see how that feels for me. We also tested my body mass index, so my muscle versus fat ratio, and I saw that I really need to gain about 5 pounds of protein. So, not protein, muscle. The protein is going to help with that, but I need to gain about 5 pounds of muscle. I feel like I've gained some of that already, and I'm aiming to gain 5 pounds of muscle by the end of this season. And that also really helps to protect bone density. And I'm doing that by lifting heavy weights at the gym twice a week. So pre IVF, that's like what was that? Pre 2018. I went to the gym a lot. I did a lot of HIIT training, a lot of cardio, spinning, lifting weights, bar classes. And after that, and after just the several year journey of heartbreak that I write about in my new book, I was definitely experiencing adrenal fatigue. And I feel like I've had some level of adrenal fatigue since childhood because I did experience childhood trauma in what felt like a significant way to me. And I know my body was just constantly producing these stress hormones. And that then during different stressful times in life, that was accelerated. And so I really felt like on the other side of that heartbreak experience, I needed to do a more extensive adrenal healing process. And part of that, I needed more gentle forms of movement. So that's really been my focus over these past several years. Turned to walking. I've always been a big walker, but prioritizing that more like every day, getting my 10,000 steps in, gentle yoga. And once a week, there's a more energetic dance class that I love to go to, sometimes a hike. But I stopped going to the gym. I stopped doing all that intense cardio. And then, like I said, last spring, I felt called to bring in more of that muscle building again with the low impact sculpt and Pilates. And I felt myself getting stronger. And then this past fall in September, I got a gym membership again. I'm going twice a week now to lift weights. And one day I'm doing upper body, another day I'm doing lower body. I may move to 3 days a week, but I wanted to just see if I could start to weave into. And I'm actually really enjoying it. It's like riding a bike. It's like I did it a lot in the past and it's been some time. Feels good to be doing it again. And other than that, I'm continuing with my daily walks and definitely having a dog helps with this. I also really enjoy that as an opportunity to get outside in nature, get some fresh air. It's really when I process my day. I do that at the end of my workday before transitioning into dinner in the evening. And then, like I said, just adjusting to eating 3 meals a day. So changing my schedule, like needing to kind of change my teaching times and my appointment times a bit. And I'm still kind of massaging that out. I feel like I'll have a better handle of it as I move into 2025 and can just kind of map out my schedule fresh from there. And I've briefly been counting my macros using an app called MyFitnessPal to just plug in the food that I'm eating. And I'm not doing this right now, but I did this initially when I was just trying to get a sense of like how much protein do these things have and how much carbs and how many fats, just to try to get the right ratios. I don't like to get too nitty-gritty with that because I do have my history of eating disorders in the past, and I like to be more intuitive with my eating. But that helped me just to get a sense of how to get the right foods in the right amounts. And I feel really good about how that's going now. I also added in a mid-afternoon nap, rest break after lunch, which has been supportive, and a few supplements. I've always taken vitamin D, also adding in things like iodine for my thyroid and minerals. And if you've been here for a while, you know that I have been eating in a way called the Bean Protocol. I did an interview with Unique Hammond, who is an advocate of the Bean Protocol, and she named it the Bean Protocol, and she learned it from a woman named Karen Hurd, who I work with to get some guidance. And I've been getting that guidance around kind of how to shift the Bean Protocol for perimenopause, and that's been supportive too. And a big part of the Beam protocol is no caffeine. And one of the things during my book launch in the spring, I started bringing back in some caffeine. And I need to tell you, I've never been a big coffee drinker. I do like coffee. I can't drink caffeinated coffee. So I do like decaf every now and again. I've never been like a daily coffee drinker, except I think when I was in college. But I love, love, love green tea. Oh my gosh. Like it's like, I think it might be like my favorite thing in terms of food, whether it's matcha or genmaicha or sencha, just any kind of green tea. But even that impacts me. So I've really completely gone off caffeine, and I am making my own almond milk, which I've done for some time. And I started also making my own cashew milk. Cashew milk is actually easier to make than almond milk because you don't need to use a nut milk bag. You don't need to use a super heavy duty blender. And I kind of do a mixture of those two things in the morning after I have my protein rich breakfast. Not doing any alcohol, and I haven't been doing that for some time. I feel like really once I turn 45, definitely once I turn 46, my body really cannot process alcohol. And I was considering going on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And I did a lot of research, again, listened to a lot of podcasts, talking to a lot of people, reading a lot of books. I went on it in small doses for a cycle, but I told myself I was going to try it for a cycle and see how I felt. But I feel like I'm feeling so much better with these just diet and lifestyle shifts that I want to just stick with those and until I feel like I need something different. So I may bring in BHRT at a later point, but it's really been about just trying to keep things as simple as possible for now. So really listening more deeply to my body and then the whole soul level, because the second half of our lives is really about individuating from our families and our cultures. Most of us have gone through some sort of midlife initiation, which asks us to clean up old traumas from the past that haven't been processed, to shed the false personality, to really lead from our soul and step into our life task, which is our soul's work. So I am really orienting around that for the second half of my life. And one of the things I'm tuning more deeply into, which I've done at different times, but now I'm doing it in a more deliberate way, is dream work and keeping my dream journal next to my bed, analyzing my dreams, definitely safeguarding my morning practice, which I always do, but now with even more passion, setting aside times for retreat. So just really feeling like I need to prioritize quiet time. And of course, always prioritizing sleep, which I always do. I'm usually in bed lights out by 9 o'clock. And I'm just really, really emphasizing that right now, especially as we're heading into winter where I live. And I'm still on this journey of healing my adrenals because it is a long-term process. And I feel like I'm in a good place with it, but I feel like I just need to continue to prioritize that. And I know that sleep and rest are the things that help to heal the adrenals the most, and staying away from caffeine, from intensive exercise, of course, constantly stress management. And, I want to say that I don't intend to slow down in the second half of life. And I want to add some kind of context to that. I am I am very much a fan of slow living with periods of sprint at times. And, again, after one's midlife initiation, which I wrote about in my handbook for the Heartbroken book, and this individuation and feeling called to step more fully into my life's task, my soul's task, I intend for this to be a really fruitful time in my life over the next few decades, a time of service and expression and expansion. And I want to give my body as much support as possible and also be really listening deeply to what is mine to do so that the work that I do is very intentional. It is very focused. It's not scattered. It's not dispersed. And the things that I'm building out in my business, in my work life, are very intentional. And I'm building things out with a multi-year process. And that's not to say that there's not curveballs or there's not spontaneity or intuitive impulses. Those are all there, but there is a bigger vision that I am building out. So this takes patience, it takes strategy, it takes soul connection, and it takes pacing oneself. And I want to presence that perimenopause, the start time can range for women. It can start as early as 35, can go to 55. It can last around 10 to 12 years. It's really reverse puberty. It's a reverse adolescence where we're going through constant changes during this whole period of time. So I'm really remembering the Buddha's teaching on impermanence and again, giving myself this season to settle into these changes. And I know that there will be constant changes and I'm going to be needing to constantly kind of maybe shift strategy or change course, but to really stay present and aware of when that's needed. So, really emphasizing sleep and liver health and gut health and making my health my number one priority and knowing that everything really stems from and supports this. So, I'm grateful for my body because it let me know that it needed something different. I'm grateful that I had the extended time off to be able to hear that because I don't feel like if I hadn't taken the whole month of August off, I wouldn't have gotten it in the same way. So this is a real reminder that time off, deeply unplugged, is so, so important for our health, for our sanity, for connecting with our vision for our lives. I'm also grateful for synchronicity of just having that meal with a friend and just what she shared that day really instigated the light bulb moment for me. I'm grateful for other women sharing their stories. And after that light bulb went off, I just reached out to more women that I know in their late 40s, early 50s, and started asking questions. I'm grateful that there are more and more resources available about this, that I think we're going to be seeing a lot more changes in the next 5, 10 years as my generation, as Gen X, goes through menopause. And we're really altering the landscape for future generations of women so it doesn't have to be so bewildering. And I'm feeling quite good now. I'm grateful for that. And I feel excited about this change. I am grateful to be growing older. I feel growing older is a gift and a privilege. I am really proud of the work that I've done on myself and the insights that I've had, the wisdom that I've gained. And I'm looking forward to being of greater and greater service to other women and to the world as I move into the later years of my life. So if you're going through this process too, hopefully some of what I shared with you will be supportive. And if this is something that's ahead for you, I hope it can help to open your eyes to what's to come, how to relate to it when it does, how to prepare. Above all, as women, we are so sensitive to shifts, from the most subtle shifts to the seismic shifts, shifts in weather, in seasons, the lunar phases, our hormones, especially during the big P's, puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause. And while I was not pregnant to deliver a child, I ended up having an abortion. I remember during my pregnancy, those early weeks of pregnancy, I felt like a different person. It's hormones alter things so, so much. They have a huge impact. So it's important that we presence these shifts, not only in how we relate to our personal lives, but in how we relate to our work and overall the work of art that is our lives. So listen deeply, ask your body what she's needing, trust what's coming through, and have the courage to make the pivots needed to ask other women to seek support and to really embrace this constant journey of change that is our lives as women. So I'm grateful to be on this journey with you. I'll keep you posted how things unfold. And thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, change doesn't come from listening alone. I invite you to commit to taking one small or large, courageous action after today's conversation. One step you can take, if you haven't already, is to sign up for my Sunday journal. It's a weekly newsletter filled with inspiration and reflections about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential to help you become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. You can subscribe at programs-sarahavaughnstover.com/journal. And if you found this podcast valuable, please share it with the women in your world. Also, I'd be very grateful if you'd leave a review. It helps others find resources like this, and I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you after listening today. Above all, keep going, and never forget the unique offerings you and your true self bring to the world. Until next time, I'm sending you my heartfelt support.